Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Pax What She Said live recap show. We are going to be recapping the Washington football game, but we're also going to be looking ahead to the Cardinals because that is only 3 days away, and so much news came out today. I don't even know how to wrap my head around the last 24 hours. But Maggie, how are you feeling after yesterday's win?
Hungover, like, I didn't drink much, but it just feels like so much
Much.
happened, and then
Keyword.
and then everything happened this morning, and it's like, "Alright, well, I guess we gotta dive into a Thursday game already," so it's a lot to digest.
Yeah, it is a lot to digest. I am feeling pretty strong about this win. I don't know if strong is the right word, but solid win. I mean, beating a team that's inferior to you by 2 scores, besides a garbage time field goal, the Packers defense only gave up a singular touchdown, which honestly that touchdown was just an insane catch by Terry McLaurin, and there wasn't really much anyone could do. So I thought the
Yeah.
defense played the best we've seen this season, which is crazy because they're missing everyone. But it just goes to show, what they've done depth wise and how everybody's stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, and it feels like it's been a trend so far every week, but every post game, you've got LaFleur and Rodgers, and I think Ellen Lazard even said it this week, just talking about how this offense is close. And every week we think like, okay, well, maybe we're going to get there. You and I talked about it on Pax What She Said with Rachel that, hey, Washington football team defense is really bad this season, which wasn't necessarily the case. Obviously, their front four is better than maybe the stats would indicate, but yeah, I mean, I think there were some missed opportunities definitely on the field for the Packers offense, and going up against some of the better offenses they're facing in the coming weeks didn't bounce back maybe as much as we'd want them to.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been missing from this season is that blowout win. Like the Packers have won a number of games handedly, no question. Like I'll never turn down a 2 score win, but we haven't seen them drop. I think they're averaging at this point in the season, right? Like 32, 33 points a game. They haven't had a 30-point game yet, unless I'm remembering incorrectly. Like they had dropped 240 burgers at this point in the season. The offense just isn't firing away. And I don't know if that's just the loss of David Bakhtiari or it's that teams have so much tape on them and they have to get a little bit more creative. Loss of MVS because of the deep ball. I think there's a number of factors, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that blow it open kind of game that this Packers offense is capable of. We just haven't seen it yet.
Well, and I think it's funny because I talked about that a little bit on Twitter today too. Like, if you look at Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon's numbers, they haven't ran for like any touchdowns. The Packers have 4 rushing touchdowns all season. AJ Dillon doesn't have any. Rodgers has 2 of the 4. But they're averaging over 100 yards a game still on the ground. So they are being productive in the run game. It's just, I guess, not what we're expecting. And it doesn't get any easier than on Thursday because the Cardinals are the number one ranked defense this year in points against so far through 7 weeks. So it's like we keep saying, "Oh, we got the Bears front, you got the Washington front. They had TJ Watt and Nick Bosa. Like, there's going to be opportunities." Well, maybe not. Maybe not this week because the Cardinals are just as good.
So it's interesting that you bring that up because I had a little debate with Andy Herman on Pack a Day last night about the run game. And while I don't disagree that it just wasn't working last night against against the Washington football team, I just think that Matt LaFleur needs to continue to send both running backs because in my mind, Aaron Jones, philosophically, I understand it wasn't working. They weren't getting anywhere with it. The passing game was working, so continue on with that. They're winning. It didn't matter yesterday. But in general, when you have a playmaker like Aaron Jones and a little bit AJ Dillon, but I mean this more because of Aaron Jones, he's not your average running back, and he's going to get positive yardage out of seemingly thin air, and he's going to more likely than not break off a big play every single game. I just think you can't just take him out of the equation. And I think they're, especially now, we'll get to this, without Devontae Adams on Thursday night, they're going to be, and they should be, yes, very sad about Tay. They should be more reliant on a guy like Aaron Jones, even though the Cardinals defense is top 10, top 5, whatever it is, even though they're number 1 in points, what is it, allowed
Points
against?
against, yeah.
Against, thank you. I just think that like when you have a playmaker like Aaron Jones, go play him, lean on him.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing too, like, if you look at the offense, yes, you can get contributions from Randall Cobb, they brought him back for a reason. MVS, if he comes back, would be, I think, a huge addition, Robert Tonyan,
Yeah.
Mercedes Lewis, but Aaron Jones is number 2 in the
Yes.
offense. Like, it's Devontae, and then it's Aaron Jones, and there's a pretty significant gap there, and it's no disrespect to the other players, it's just who you have in Tay and Aaron Jones, so to not,
Yeah.
kind of feature them. I think what the running
It's
backs
just the
combined for
fact.
4 right, for 4 rushes in the first half. Like it and the first half, I mean, it kind of stunk for the Packers O-line. Rodgers took 3 sacks and then he didn't get sacked again the second half. So I think there's some growing pains there. But against these better offenses, you can't afford to start slow. Like Washington, you are able to kind of find your rhythm in the second half. It's not going to happen against the Cardinals
No.
or the Chiefs.
Yeah, because the Cardinals have put up over 30 points in like 6 of the last 7 games this season. Like they are going to score on you. And like, granted, the Packers defense, I think, is peaking at a good.
Oh no. Did we lose Perry a little bit? Perry, we lost you. All right. Well, we're gonna go to our ad from Manscaped while we get Perry back on online.
It's football season, baby, and you know what that means? It means we're going for 2 here with the sponsors of today's show, Manscaped. Blitzing through hairs has never been easier, and it's time for you to join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using code PWSS20 at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. It's 3 and out the window with all other trimmers. Now go tame that Wildcat offense.
The world is starting to open, and the Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped is here to help you get ready. Inside, you'll find their brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, plus 2 free gifts, Performance boxer briefs, and the Shed travel bag. The brand new Lawnmower 4.0 is here to take your defense to the next level.
Get 20% off and free shipping with the code PWSS20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code PWSS20. Stiff arm your pubes out of the playoffs this year with Manscaped.
All right. So Perry's internet is restarting. She will be back momentarily. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop those in the chat at this point, other than Tyler, of course, being sad about Devontae. I think we all are. I'm a little more concerned, I guess, for his family at this point, his young daughter, just hoping that they are all safe. But obviously a positive test means, given his vaccination status, means that it was a positive test and not, hey, you made it back.
Just a little technical difficulties. Oh God, I hate my internet so much. It always does that at like the worst, like most least opportune times in the world.
But you're back now, and that's okay. And we got
Yeah.
our ad out of the way. Thank you, Manscaped.
Yeah, thank you, Manscaped. Don't forget to buy a Razor 4.0 lawnmower, PWSS 20.
Killed it. So what were you saying before your net completely shut down?
It
It sounded like it was really good, whatever.
I was saying that basically that the Packers defense is peaking, I think, at the right time to go up against the Cardinals offense because they've only given up a little less than 16 points per game for the last 4 games. And I know that they haven't gone up against a high-flying offense, but they're gonna need every red zone stop, every turnover opportunity, like every battle that they won against Washington, like they're going to need on Thursday.
Yeah, and I'm about to drop like every cliche that exists about this, but it's like coach speak, right? There's no style points when you win. All wins count the same. Like I know you can look at the Packers and the offenses that they've played so far and be like, "Oh, well, it's the Bears offense or it was a Washington football team with Taylor Heineke who wasn't in the league a couple years ago." And like yes, but there's so many growth opportunities that come with that, like an Eric Stokes having to cover Terry McLaurin all game. Like there's so many bits and pieces when you go up against like everyone in the NFL is good. you make it to the NFL because you're a talented player.
Everyone gets
So
paid.
everyone gets paid, and it's a litmus test. It's like a measuring stick opportunity for so many of these young guys that when you do have to go up against, it's a good thing they're not playing the Cardinals week 1, right? Because now you've got Eric Stokes, who's got like 5 games as a starter under his belt, going up against potentially DeAndre Hopkins. Would you have wanted that week 2? Absolutely not. But week 8, we're like, hey, given the guys he's gone up against, Jamar Chase, Terry McLaurin, like, let's see
I
what he
still
can
don't
do.
want it, but yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like it's you can't just discredit the offenses because they're providing so many valuable opportunities for the young defenders that are stepping up while we wait for guys like Preston and Jair and Z to come back.
No, I think you make an excellent point. Like it's made the depth even stronger. And so at this point in the season where, you were probably getting Preston Smith back on Thursday, you're probably getting Kevin King back on Thursday as well, but you get to be a little bit more versatile in the way that you use them, trusting that the rest of the line is rushing the passer very well. And Eric Stokes and Rasul Douglas out of nowhere has come out and has become like an incredibly competent and useful player that you can also use even with Kevin King back. And you would have never known that you can rely on and utilize Rasul Douglas in some way if Kevin King hadn't gotten hurt. And you don't ever want a player to get hurt. But like I said, I think you just make an excellent point that it's just given guys these opportunities to show what they can do. And on top of that, the Packers are winning. So it wasn't like they were forfeiting these games to give young guys opportunities. They were doing that and also winning. It is going to be interesting, though, no Joe Barry on Thursday because, the Packers defense, like we said, finally gets this sort of complete game that everyone's been waiting to watch them have. They get 4 stops in the red zone. They only allow a field goal, essentially, every time the Washington football team's offense made it past the 20-yard line, which they have not done yet this season. Like I said, really peaking. And then, of course, Joe Barry tests positive for COVID and is not going to be able to coach on Thursday. So what now,
Yeah, I mean, I think, we heard a little bit of it maybe from LaFleur today, and I'm sure we'll hear from other coaches throughout the week, but it sounds kind of like what we all expected. Jerry Gray, given his coordinator experience, will probably take over play calling duties there. I mean, like Mike Smith, Kirk Olivadotti, there's a lot of really good, talented coordinators in that room or assistant coaches in the room, I think, that can help with some of that. Jerry Montgomery's another one. So, I think the guys will be ready to play. And I thought it was really interesting too, because JJ Watt, there was like a sound bite of him against, I'm trying to think of who it was. I think it was last week. I think might have been the Browns actually. So it might have been a couple weeks ago, but it was just him saying like, everybody discredits us. However we win, like it's never good enough. And why can't people just think that we're a good football team? And I do think that the Cardinals are a really good football team, but I also think that this will say maybe more about the Packers as a football team if they can somehow go in through all of this adversity and win than it does about the Cardinals.
I completely agree with that. I think it's very clear that the Cardinals are a very good team. They're the last undefeated team. They're, I think, top 5 offense and defense. Like there's very little, I guess, left for them to prove. Kyler Murray is fully in the MVP conversation. DeAndre Hopkins is doing DeAndre Hopkins things. Their offense looks great. So yeah, I think the way that the Packers battle against this team is exactly right. Like says more about this team because it's interesting that JJ Watt says that because I feel like that's a little bit the narrative around the Packers as well. I've been seeing a lot of commentary how reminds people more of the 2019 Packers and that yes, they're winning games ugly and there's just like some question marks still. Well, I'd rather win games ugly with like half of their starters out than just completely bomb the season. And I think it says a lot about the team in a good way, in a positive way, and like a strength way that they can battle through adversity. They're going to need that sort of grit when they get to the playoffs. Because let's be honest, they're going to take the North and they're going to get to the playoffs. I think this game could be, we're kind of veering away from Washington, which is fine. But I think this game in Arizona could be like actually a very exciting and kind of like, I don't know how to say it, just locker room defining game, if you will. Like no Joe Barry, likely no Devontae. How do these guys rally together? Scrappy is the word I was looking for. Matt LaFleur is going to have to really dive into his playbook and find some interesting formations and play calls, because we know like Tay's probably the first read on almost every passing play. It's like, what can this offense do? They've gone 6-0 under him without Davante Adams, and I don't think it's necessarily, a shoo-in that they lose this game. It's just going to be a lot more difficult to win. But I think that they can band together. I think they can at least put on a show. I just hope it's not the Bucks game from last season.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something to be said about being counted out before you get to the game. And I'm not saying that's necessarily happening with the Packers right now, but I mean, we saw the Vegas line shift immediately when the news hit about Devontae. So, the odds, I mean, they do start to stack up against you. And it's not that anybody's trying to discredit this Packers team, but, you're without your all pro corner. You are potentially, again, without your all pro left tackle. You're without your all pro edge rusher. Like, yes, you can make that work against certain teams, but you're going up against your biggest challenge of the season. And you're likely now without your all pro wide receiver. Like, the pieces are stacking up against you. So I think it's really interesting actually that you mentioned adversity, because somebody that I enjoy following quite a bit on Twitter, Packer History 1 is their had talked about kind of the difference we're seeing from 2019, 2020, and the 2021 Packers, where the 2019 Packers were kind of just like happy to be there. Like, it was Matt LaFleur's first season. We didn't know what we had. It turned into a miraculous season that ended, of course, not how you want it to end, but better team than maybe anybody would have given them credit for. 2020, the adversity didn't hit until the very end of the season, and the team didn't really know how to overcome it or rally against it. And I think what we're seeing so far in 2021, we've talked about this all off season, is how you want to see Matt LaFleur respond and this team when they're down and they're facing adversity early. And I'm not really sure, I'm going to knock on some wood, I guess, that this team can face much more adversity than they have through 7 weeks. And the way that they're responding to it has been really promising. They're a 6-1 football team playing some of their not best football when you ask them. There's like a lot more. Rashawn Gary has said, like, there's more out there for us. We haven't played our best game. Matt LaFleur said, like, hey, there's a ton we want to fix on offense. Aaron Rodgers says, hey, we're close, but we're not there yet. So, like, you could be getting there when you're fully healthy and ready to go instead of still trying to make things work.
Yeah. And the craziest part, like, I completely agree with them. They're 6-1, and I still feel like they haven't reached peak potential.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's fine for now that they're not. Like, I'd rather them peak the second half of the season and have like an insane amount of momentum going into the playoffs. Like, it is a lot about peaking at the right time. And I don't mind. Look, there's a lot said kind of about letting guys get healthy this week or last week because of Washington, or it's a short week, etc. But like, I think that it's better to let injuries fully heal before you throw players back out there. And if that means that the second half of the season, I guess we're already at the second half of the season, geez. December, right, and playoffs is when we finally see this Packers team fully together, then kind of so be it. It is what it is. They're going to have to just continue to find ways to win. And it's not like there aren't pieces that I'm really excited to see on Thursday night. Like, we haven't seen a ton of Amari Rodgers yet. He's had like one catch in a game. Like, EQ started to get involved against Washington. Could we see more of that? Kylan Hill's had a carry or two. Could we see more of him? Like, there are definitely pieces for Matt LaFleur to throw in here that could like cause some confusion and be a little bit of a wrinkle that the Cardinals don't see coming. I kind of think it's not this extreme, but when I was watching the Lions play the Rams on Sunday, and they just kind of like threw everything at them. They're like, let's do a fake punt and let's have a flea flicker and like, let's just throw everything out there that we can because we have nothing to lose. Like, that's an extreme, but I feel like the Packers could go into Arizona a little bit with that attitude. Like, dive deep into that playbook and just see what you got. Throw anything at them.
Yeah, what is the saying? Desperation breeds creativity or something. And I'm not saying the Packers are desperate, but
No.
I mean, if you want to see LaFleur reach into his playbook, like without your star wide receiver, that's typically when you have to kind of get a little bit more creative in your formations and your scheme.
And he did that every other time they've had Davante Adams out. Like, you saw, I don't know, going into New Orleans last year, it was a dome game against Drew Brees, no Davante, and you're like, shit, shit. Like, and they ended up winning because Alan Lazard had a huge game, and everyone else decided to step up. I think it would be interesting to see if they pull Bakhtiari back this week. I feel like they won't. I feel
I
like
don't
just
think
wait
so.
and bring him back for Kansas City and give him that sort of mini bye that everyone else is going to get. MVS too, I feel like I don't know if he's going to practice this week. There are like a lot of question marks there, but it'd be nice to see some of them back on the field, especially after you lose your defensive coordinator and your number one wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like the last couple weeks, this team is just taking more and more hits, and we're not really seeing anybody like, oh, good, so and so's back in the lineup. It's like, no, Kevin King came back, and then he's out, and then you get to see Rasul Douglas, and thankfully he's practicing. He looks good, but he had the shoulder injury. Preston Smith, hoping to come back this week. It looks like he will be able to as well, but. Yeah, it'd be nice for this Packers team to finally start returning players instead of just making their injury report longer and longer each week. But I mean, I think this is kind of a really interesting opportunity for the Packers to be, and not that you go in expecting to lose any game or like, oh, it's okay if they lose, but given where the Packers are at in the season, I'm curious kind of what you thought the record would have been because I know, we both picked the Packers to lose the 49ers game and they ended up pulling that one out. Like there were some really tough tests early in the season. So for the Packers to be 6-1 going into Thursday Night Football, I think is, a better record than maybe most of us would have given them credit for to start the season, especially after the way that they performed week 1, which looking back on the season, the adversity is probably exactly what they needed to start.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would have probably had them at 6-1 or 5-2 at this point in the
Yeah.
season, just because like it's this next half really that has all of the tough games, but also some of these tough games aren't looking as tough. Like teams change so much over the course of the season. Like I would have pegged the Seahawks as a potential like 50-50 game. And now I feel like the Packers can like very easily beat that team at home. I think they're very evenly matched with the Rams at this point. The Chiefs look totally beatable as well. So I just think things evolve.
Mhm.
But again, like the outcome of the Arizona game, or at least like the way they show up, I shouldn't say the outcome, win or lose doesn't matter. The way they show up, I think on Thursday is going to like set the tone a little bit for the rest of the season. Prime time, heavyweight, last undefeated team, like potential for a rematch in the playoffs. Like feels like a little bit the game.
Yeah, and
Is
I
that a
think
crazy thing to say? Especially because we're saying like they might lose, they probably will lose, but I think it's more about showing up rather than win or lose.
yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where I was going with this too, is like it just feels really important to see how the team responds. And, week 1 they lost and it was we weren't ready to play, like, we showed up a little too arrogant, blah blah blah. And that's kind of been a theme in a lot of the team's losses. For whatever reason, they weren't ready. They weren't able to bring their own juice. Like they've showed up to these big moments and these big games and kind of been stagnant. So I know that you're going with a depleted squad potentially. And it is, I mean, it's an undefeated team, but if you can't find the juice to go into, yes, it's a short week. I mean, the travel sucks. Like, totally get it. These guys are so banged up from Washington and then they have to turn around, and get on a plane for a number of hours. And, that stuff is hard. But if you can't, find the energy as a team
Yeah.
going into a big game like this that could be a tiebreaker for a number 1 seed in the playoffs, like, that's the stuff that is concerning to me moving forward. It's not necessarily the W or the L in the stat column. It's like, how does the team show
Yeah,
up for
for
this?
sure. That's why I'm like kind of excited. Like, let's see how scrappy they can get. Like, if everyone's like, oh, they're winning ugly, then like, okay, go win another ugly one. I don't really
It's still a
care
W.
how you do it. I do really quickly like wanted to talk about Rashawn Gary
Yes, of course.
because I feel like as an average NFL fan, you could probably say, like, what's the deal here? First round pick, 12th overall. He's not really doing much. And unless you're like literally watching every single snap of every single Packers game, like we are, you probably aren't seeing how much he's impacting the game. And then he comes out against Washington and has like, I think 8 pressures, 10 pressures, 4 quarterback hits, 2 sacks. Should have been a 3rd sack, in my opinion. Taylor Heinicke got the ball out, but like
Forced
Rashawn had,
fumble.
yeah, forced. One of them was a strip. Like he was just all over the place. And it's kind of what we've been waiting for, right? Like it's the Rashawn Gary show up and be that 12th overall pick player. Is this the trajectory? Is this the expectation moving forward? Was it just a fluky game for him because it's Washington and they don't have a very good offensive line? Like, what are your thoughts moving forward on Rashawn?
I mean, I think it's really telling too that, Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers and, a lot of the times unprompted will single out Rashawn Gary for his work ethic and what he means to the team. And, Dean Lowry had said Washington is one of the best pass blocking offensive lines in football. And, they really got after them in the second half. And a large part of that was Rashawn Gary. And I thought it was super interesting. I was kind of going back and looking at some of his numbers after the game. He has 15 quarterback hits, through 7 weeks. And last season, all season, he had 11 quarterback hits.
Wow.
So he's already exceeded those numbers. And I mean, a lot of that you could say is opportunity. Z hasn't been playing all season. He was filling in for Preston. But I think it just goes to show you that you need those guys on the field. And Joe Barry, when he's back and able, I think has to prioritize that front because we've seen it. God, it feels like a career season for Dean Lowry. Kingsley Keke looks good. Like all the things that we were super worried about kind of going into the first couple weeks of the season has really been a strength of the defense.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Like the lights got turned on somewhere in the defensive line room.
That was the problem. They were studying in the dark.
They were studying in the dark.
There you go.
Shoot. No, I think something that you said I actually think the fact that Preston and Za'Darius being off the field makes Rashawn's numbers even more impressive because both of those guys attract attention in ways. Za'Darius more than anything. And so you'd hope that when they are being like sort of pulled, that Rashawn actually ends up getting home. But even without those guys, he's being able to impact the game even like more so. So I just feel like he's at that like year in his development where he's about to start to put up some like career numbers for himself, like for the first time. And again, like you said, when they do come back, I think even more so because like we just said, they both attract attention and then you just got pressure from all over. Same with Kenny. Like Kenny Clark is just continuing to ascend to great lengths. And I think like both of their juice and their energy is like translating well to the rest of the line. And you get guys like Whitney Merciless in his first game for the Packers who like very much was in there impacting the game, almost had a sack. I think Jalen Smith also kind of whiffed on a sack. Like they brought in some guys in the absence of their star players who are obviously not playing to the levels of their star players, but at least doing enough to help the team.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's kind of the takeaway. And, you can't, I know, Rodgers kind of alluded to it a little bit with the injuries, but it's nice to see the Packers team kind of battling through the injuries early and not what we saw in 2010. Obviously, it turned out fine, but when you are entering the playoffs and you're hitting all those injuries, like, you're hoping that this Packers team is facing it early enough and still winning that you can start to get your key pieces back for kind of a December stretch run into potentially January and hopefully February.
Oh, well, we just got a notification that the current expectation is that MVS will be activated off IR and play on Thursday.
Well, there you
So
go.
we put it out into the universe, Maggie, and the universe responded. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like at this point in the season, though, what's the identity of the Green Bay Packers?
That's a good question. It's really interesting because Aaron Rodgers in his presser said, like, when you get guys like Rashawn Gary and Devondre Campbell, who maybe on like a normal Packers team wouldn't have the ability to be vocal leaders that they do this season, like through adversity. He said that's when you find out the identity of your football team is when guys that don't normally have the opportunity to speak up are speaking up a ton. So he didn't necessarily define what that meant, but I thought that was really interesting that you said that because just, yesterday he mentioned kind of learning the identity of this team. And I think a lot of it is guys stepping up in unexpected ways.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week and it's reoccurring at this point is just that next man up mentality, which again is like very coach speak, but is exactly what the Packers are doing. It's exactly what's happening with this team. It's why they keep winning.
And it's completely bought in the locker room. Like Aaron Jones, Rashawn Gary, Devondre Campbell, so many guys have said, like, we really believe your number can get called, whether you're on the bench or like, activated from the practice squad, and it is next man up and you just do your job.
Yeah.
It was like do your 111th last season.
Yeah, it is. And you're seeing it. Like I keep going back to Rasul Douglas, but I'm just like, this man was brought in off the practice squad and got thrown into a game like 2 weeks into a season, and 2 weeks into him being on the Packers this season, and like he looks
Looks
great.
good.
He's doing exactly like, I don't know if it's like, I guess kudos honestly to Goot and the front office on their ability to scout these like kind of mid-range free agents and like pluck people off practice squads. It's like unbelievably impressive. And I know for fans, it's so much more fun to get the big splash signing and the Stephon Gilmore. And yes, I would have loved Stephon Gilmore, but like the players that Goot's bringing in are very impactful.
Mhm. Yeah.
I know people don't like the Goot love, but I'm gonna give it where it's due.
I think he's deserving of quite a bit of praise. I mean, especially like this team could have fallen apart so many times, and it's possible they're still winning without Douglas and Merciless and Jalen Smith. But
Right.
the Devondre Campbell's super underrated when it happened signing, and he's been maybe arguably one of the best players on the defensive side of the ball, if not the best. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any like final takeaways from the Washington game or anything you're specifically looking for against the Cardinals?
I want to see the offense put up points, which I know is, I think, not any amount of points because like 3 points isn't going to cut it. But I would like to see this Packers offense start to find a rhythm, and I think maybe MVS can help a little bit with that. But you're going up against the number 1 ranked Cardinals defense, so even if they could put up like 30 points, which was so easy for them last season, if they can just start. Even if you lose by a field goal and it's like 45-42 or whatever the heck it is, like
Yeah.
that ability to find a rhythm on offense. And I think for the defense, just kind of building off of the red zone opportunities that they had against Washington, because I think that was like a huge momentum shifting moment for them. And Janet Sullivan, Dean Lowry, all the guys came into the post game and said, like, this is what we emphasized all week. Like, we were so sick of it. This is how we responded. And they responded, as well as you could have asked them to.
Yeah. So according to PFF, by the way, they're
Okay.
third now in points allowed and 5th on defense. So there is someone better out there. The Packers are not playing, if that makes anybody feel better. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with everything you said. I think this team is going to have to force some turnovers on Thursday. I think
Undefeated when they do.
there we go. I think like they're gonna have to make their own opportunities. Like they're
Yeah.
gonna have to ball hawk a little bit more than they do. Like I'd love to see Eric Stokes like make a play on the ball this time. Come up with one of those fumbles, like a fumble recovery. The forced fumbles are great, but recover it too. Like I think they're on their way to doing that, but this is a week where you're gonna have to take the ball away from that offense.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to like, put any negativity out there, but Taylor Heinicke having like a 40-yard just wide open up the gut, like if you are having trouble containing Taylor, you're gonna like, I don't want to think about Kyler Murray. So the run contain, I think, is almost bigger than like the passing defense going into Thursday.
No, yeah. I mean, that's like probably number 1.
Kyler
We actually
frickin'
talked
Murray.
about this happy day yesterday, and I thought Andy made a really, really like astute point as usual. And that it was, you're not game planning for Taylor Heinicke to run. So those runs are kind of like just opportunistic on his point of view, from his point of view. But against Kyler Murray, like you're game planning for those
it's
quarterbacks.
coming.
Like, it's coming. So I feel like it's almost easier to stop because it's expected. Now that's like theoretically. In reality, I don't know. I mean, Kyler Murray is like on one this season. So they could expect it, plan for it, and he could still rip off a big run or, a quarterback designed run into the end zone and score a touchdown. All of it can still happen, but I do think there is a level of like preparedness that they're going to have come Thursday, or at least you'd hope. We will see.
Knock on wood again.
We will see. Okay, so we have a very early Packs What She Said episode coming out probably tomorrow. Or Wednesday. Tomorrow, where we are interviewing Danny Surik. She is the Cardinals team reporter and producer. So look out for that. It's going to be very fun. We're really looking forward to talking to her, especially after everything that happened today. Lots of news to digest. And yeah, I think that's the major update. We'll be back on a normal schedule after the Cardinals game, of course. Our live show is going to be next Tuesday.
Yeah.
next Tuesday on the 2nd. Getting my dates right. And as always, follow us on Twitter at Perry_Woolsey, at Maggie J. Loney, at PWSS Podcast. I can't believe the season is flying by this fast. It's been so fun. We're loving these Twitch lives, these Twitter lives recaps. So we'll have another one ready for you at the end of this week after the Cardinals game. Hopefully it won't be us just crying because the Packers completely imploded. But we're ready for it. We're excited for it. Look out for the episode with Danny in the next few days, and go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.